This is Robert Burke, and welcome to episode number 31 of When to Play. And today I am not going to be talking about a specific game that can actually be played. I am going to be talking about something that's been big in the news lately among the Kickstarter and the board gaming community. And that's this fiasco with the board game The Doom that came to Atlantic City. Now, if you haven't seen this news, if you follow what's going on in board gaming, or if you follow what's going on in Kickstarter, this is something you've probably heard about. And I have a lot of opinions on this, so I thought I would just share some of those opinions with you. So basically, there was a company called The Forking Path out of Portland, Oregon, and this was one individual who started a Kickstarter project for a board game called The Doom that came to Atlantic City. And the premise of it, it's kind of like a Monopoly clone, or really it's like a Monopoly satire with the Cthulhu world thrown on top of it. So I remember when this first came out, there was very little information on the game when the Kickstarter first came out, and I think I actually emailed them and said, look, you're not really giving enough information on what your game is. And it looked like it was just like a Monopoly clone that a company like USAopoly would do with a Cthulhu theme. But it wasn't that. They kind of expanded on what the game actually was, or they changed it. It's really hard to tell. But there were gates, and it did not play like Monopoly at all, although the game board was set up to look like Monopoly. It didn't really use Monopoly mechanics. I was still kind of vague on how the game played. I never backed it, mostly for that reason. But this game kind of took off, and it ended up raising almost $123,000 on Kickstarter, and its goal was $35,000 to produce this game. They had some fantastic sculptors that were part of the project who were doing these Cthulhu minis for the game. I think that kind of probably helped it a lot, and of course Cthulhu is really huge as well. I think the blending of Monopoly and Cthulhu appealed to a lot of people. But whatever the reason, they raised a lot of money. Their goal was $35,000. They raised $123,000. And recently, this owner of this project sent out an email or an update to all the backers that the project had failed, that they could not get it produced. And the thing that really got me about this, first of all, if you raise $123,000, you need to deliver the product. They had more than enough money to create and ship this board game. I have successfully funded a bunch of Kickstarter board game projects myself, and I know what they cost to produce, and they could have done this easily for the money that they raised. So that's a huge red flag to begin with. And if you looked at The Forking Path, if you looked at this project, and this is something I think people who are going to back a Kickstarter really need to look at, is this was the first created project by The Forking Path. So you've got to be really, when you see a project come up on Kickstarter that you're interested in, but it's that company's first project or that individual's first project, you need to do a lot more due diligence. Because that's the projects that have failed, the ones I've seen, they haven't had a previously successful project. If you're looking at a game by a company who has had games on Kickstarter in the past and have successfully delivered those games, then you've got a measure of safety based on their history. That did not exist here. So that should have been a red flag to people to look into this game more before they backed it. But games like, Tasty Minstrel games, or Dice Hate Me games, or Minion games, or a lot of these small indie developer games who use Kickstarter because they're very small, but the games get produced and get shipped out. A lot of them do very well in the aftermarket because they're good games. You can feel safe and secure with those. Not saying that you shouldn't back new designers. I back new designers all the time on Kickstarter. But when somebody doesn't have a track record, you need to look at it more closely. So he's saying that he's going to refund people all the money, but It's $123,000. So who knows how long that's going to take. Now, a lot has happened since all this blew up. In his update, the one sentence that really stood out that he posted in that update is that he said from the beginning it was all about starting a board game company and using that company to launch this game and hopefully future games. That's a huge problem, right? Because people did not back the Doom that came to Atlantic City for this guy to start a company. They weren't investing in a company. They were pledging for a game. So he should have produced the game with that money. There are rumors now, these are all rumors, so nobody has any proof of what this guy actually did with the money, but there's rumors going around that he posted that he bought a new camera and he was working on an indie film, and he moved to a new house in Portland, and so he was using the money for his living expenses and to buy stuff that wasn't related to the project. Now, you can't really say that happened because there's no proof, but there's a lot of that kind of stuff floating around. But I think it's on the onus is on this project creator to show, he should show all the backers exactly where every dollar went. He really should. There's lawsuits, I think, going on already. But after this whole thing was going on, Cryptozoic, which is a larger game company, came in and they are buying, at least the project owner gave the rights back to the game designer and the artists. So Cryptozoic came in and is going to, the word is they're going to produce the game and they're going to give it to all the backers of the original project. And they're going to publish this game. That's really cool. And I hear a lot of people saying, oh, that's so cool, a Cryptozoic. It is cool, a Cryptozoic, but Cryptozoic saw a marketing opportunity there, right? And it's really kind of brilliant. They're going to spend all that money, produce the game. They're going to ship it out to everybody who backed it. They're going to earn a lot of goodwill among the gaming community for that. And hopefully it's a good game. Who knows? Maybe it's a great game. Maybe it'll actually make them money. But even if Cryptozoic can just break even, it's worth it for them to do something like that just for the marketing return that they're going to get from doing something like this, because there are a lot of articles and everybody's talking about this right now in the gaming community. So very cool thing, sly move, I think, by Cryptozoic to jump in and be the hero of this whole mess created by this guy who created the Doom that came to Atlantic City. So, of course, we have a big failed board game project, and people are saying Kickstarter is a bubble. All we need is some of these projects are going to fail and nobody's going to back anything anymore. And, you got the same old arguments about Kickstarter and retail stores and all this stuff, and publishers and, distributors, all these different arguments that are just regurgitated month after month after month. So of course, when something like this happens, it's all over the place again, right? It's all over the Twittersphere, it's all over Google Plus, it's all over Board Game Geek. So everybody's talking about this stuff right now, and I have a lot of opinions on this stuff as well. For example, a recent forum that I got involved with is talking about some retail store owners who really hate Kickstarter. They hate it, and they're not holding anything back. And I understand why they hate it, right? If you are a retail store and you make your living by retailing board games, and designers are now going directly to the people to sell their new designs from the designer, the manufacturer makes it, and the designer sells it and ships it right to their customer, then the designer keeps all that money, right? The manufacturer gets paid the same no matter what, so they don't care. The distributor gets the game after it's kickstarted, but the retailers, a lot of them are upset because they do not, they're not a part of they're not a part of that chain, right? Of that sales chain. So they feel like they're being cut out, and one person actually said that Kickstarter, people who use Kickstarter are stealing their customers. So I totally disagree with that, because I'm a free market kind of guy, and I think it's up to you to bring customers to your products or to your store or to however it is you're making a living as a small business. It's up to you to add value. It's up to you to focus on what you can improve on your business. It's, if you start getting into this thing where you're blaming and pointing the finger at other people because they're taking business from you, then you're probably not going to be in business very long, because people who succeed at a small business work on their business. If they're not making sales, they work on making more sales. They figure out how they can capitalize on new trends to take advantage of things that are going on in the industry. They figure out how they can make their store a better draw and draw more people in, not just to their store, but into the hobby in general. So I really disagree that, one, Kickstarter is not going away. Kickstarter is growing. If you watch, and you could look at any of the different things that you'll see on Kickstarter, music or films or publishing or board games or video games, it's growing. More and more people are going to Kickstarter. It allows creative people a way to actually earn a living now, because previously they were at the mercy of distributors and record executives and film executives and board game publishers and book publishers. They would work their whole life and create their art, and if they got a big break, their big break meant that they got a big publisher, right? And once they get the big publisher, you hear the horror stories of how they're taken for a ride and they're given a minuscule royalty, and they have to pay for all the production, so a lot of the times they never even see a dime. Even successful artists who reach some level of success in the old model haven't really made a living or a livable wage off of their art. So I love Kickstarter because it allows artists to make a living wage, because it's expensive to publish, it's expensive to distribute, it's expensive to manufacture, all that kind of stuff. And the old model, not saying the old model is wrong, it's not. The old model is great, and it's great for a lot of people. There's a lot of designers who want to use that model because they want to focus on just design. They don't want to get involved in publishing and shipping and making decisions on colors and art and that kind of stuff. They want to design their game, and that's it. So they would rather design lots of games and get a royalty on each one of them, and let all the other decisions go to the publisher. And that model works very well as well, because obviously publishers know a lot about what works in a game and what doesn't work in a game, or hopefully they do. But publishers release a lot of bad games too. I hear people say Kickstarter games are no good. That's crazy. I have so many Kickstarter games that are some of my favorite games. Eminent Domain and Alien Frontiers and Cards Against Humanity is the top-selling game. It's probably been the top-selling game in the country or in the world for the last couple years now. It's huge. It's the number one selling toy and game on Amazon.com. That's a Kickstarter game as well. Fleet is a great game that I love. There's tons of great games that have come out of Kickstarter. And there's tons of great games that come from publishers. And there's tons of mediocre games that come from Kickstarter, but there's tons of mediocre games that come from publishers too. Kickstarter is just another way to get a game published. That's all it is. So you do have to, with that being said, I think you do have to critique Kickstarter projects more than you would have to critique a game from, say, Fantasy Flight or some big company that has a reputation for producing good games. Because a lot of times it could be somebody who's developed a game and hasn't really play tested it thoroughly, so maybe it's not that good. So you really want to look into it, you want to find reviews, you want to read the rules, you want to make sure that you think it's a game that is good for what you like in a game. And again, on when to play, the whole thing in this video series is every game's got an audience, right? To say a game is just a bad game or to say a game is a great game isn't necessarily true for everybody. So you have to figure out if a game is something that you think you would really enjoy, your game group would enjoy, and it's no different on Kickstarter. Kickstarter I think, is still a great tool for board game designers, because it enables them to get their games out in front of people. It enables them to get their games out and published and get people playing them. And it's created a bunch of careers. I've seen some companies that started on Kickstarter that are doing great now. And every game they release is bringing in more and more money. And I see these games being played conventions. I see them being brought into my local game nights. So that's really great that it's a springboard. It really is a springboard or a Kickstarter for creative people to make a living. So that's something that's really cool. But with that, things like the Doom that came to Atlantic City come up, and the arguments just start going crazy back and forth. Kickstarter is horrible for the industry. It's going to ruin the industry. It's a bubble. It's going to crash. All this kind of horrible stuff. I don't think that's true. There's going to be more failures on Kickstarter, and they're going to be very public. But you know what? If somebody does not deliver, or they deliver a subpar product that's not up to what they sold on Kickstarter, then that person is, they burn their bridges, right? They are not going to be able to come back on Kickstarter again and for another project, because nobody's going to back them. They're going to say, well, that's the guy that, didn't deliver last time. We're not going to back them this time. So, and the people that do succeed and do deliver good products, they're going to have an easier time, because people who use Kickstarter are not going to hesitate when they see a project that interests them from a company or an individual that they know is going to deliver, because their track record shows that they have delivered in the past. So I think over time, you're going to start getting more and more quality things being funded on Kickstarter. And I think you'll see some of these companies grow to a size where they're not using Kickstarter anymore, where they are becoming more publishers, and they're growing into, maybe even Fantasy Flight sized publishing companies, if the hobby continues to grow. And that's one thing I also see argued about Kickstarter, is that Kickstarter is great for board games because it's growing the hobby. Because people on Kickstarter see a game that interests them, and they pledge for it, and they get it, and they like it, and so they start looking into other board games, and before you know it, they find themselves with a BGG account, and they're coming to your meetup groups, and you're growing the pie, the number of people that are interested in playing designer board games. So that argument, I think, is a pretty strong one. A lot of people say they don't see it, that they think Kickstarter's just taking money away from the friendly local game store. I don't see it that way. I think Kickstarter is truly having an impact, and it's helping, it's contributing. It's not the only thing that's contributing to the growth of the board gaming industry, but I think it's definitely one of the things that is contributing to the growth of the board gaming industry. And the bigger pie there is for the board gaming industry, the better it is for board gamers. Because the more people we're going to have available to play games that we enjoy, right? It means there's going to be more games created, which means better games for us to enjoy in the future. That's a good thing as well. And most importantly, it's going to help bring people together. I know everybody plays games for different reasons. I got into it because I really wanted that face-to-face interaction with my friends, and a way to meet other people and connect with people and make new friends. And board gaming, it's not something, you can do it online, right? You can do it with video games and, massively multiple online role-playing games like Warcraft or games like that, where you're talking to other people and playing the game together. But it's still, even that does not replace that face-to-face interaction, that human contact that is unavoidable when you play a board game, right? Because you're all sitting around the table with other human beings together, and you're laughing and you're strategizing and you're building relationships that way. So I think that's another thing that's helping to drive the growth of the board gaming industry. But Kickstarter is definitely playing a role. But the Doom that came to Atlantic City, shame on you, man. You raised $123,000 and you couldn't get the game manufactured and shipped out to your backers? That's ridiculous. They had more than enough money to get it done and get it out the door, and he failed. And this guy will never have another successful Kickstarter. If he does, he's going to have to change his name. But I really hope that you look out for, when you see a project you like, click right under their name. It says Project Bind. It's going to have their name or their company name, and it's going to tell you how many they've created in the past. If it says first created, That's their first project. So you really have to look at that project to make sure you're comfortable with giving your money to that project if they don't have a track record. All right. Consider it an investment that you might not get back. Because in this case, I don't think these people are going to get their money back, but because of Cryptozoic, they are going to get a game. But there's a lot of games out, there's a lot of projects that have failed where they're not going to get anything. All right, so keep that in mind. Also, look at what they've backed. Have they been part of the Kickstarter community? Have they backed a lot of projects? You know, a lot of times I see people coming on Kickstarter asking for $30,000-$40,000 to fund their project, and they haven't backed anything. They haven't contributed anything into the community. So I always kind of tend to avoid those and not back those. That's more of a personal choice, though. I don't think that has so much to do with whether they're going to deliver or not on their project. That's a personal thing for me. But if it's their first project, make sure that they've succeeded. If it's not their first project, click on it and see what their past projects were. And if their past projects were unsuccessful or canceled, then you're in the same boat. They're really untested, right? If they have past projects that have succeeded, find out if they were delivered, right? You can look in the comments, and you'll usually see comments, or check Board Game Geek, see if people have been playing the game. See if what people's opinion on the game were. Make sure that they delivered a game previously that they had on Kickstarter before you go backing another one, because you want to make sure that you're not going to get ripped off. Because obviously, as we see from this $123,000 scam of the Doom that came to Atlantic City, there are people out there who will take your money and not fulfill their promise to you. So that's a lot of the thoughts I have on this. You know, let me know what you think of Kickstarter. Let me know what you think of the Doom that came to Atlantic City. Let me know if you think I'm wrong or I'm right. But basically, I think Kickstarter is here to stay. I think it's a great thing for the industry. And I also think that people like this project owner should never be allowed to have another project on a crowdfunding platform again, because it's just not right. It's fraud, basically, in my opinion. So that's it. That's my thoughts on this whole Kickstarter scandal. My name is Robert Burke, and we'll be back again soon with episode number 32.